And we are live, it looks like. So we are going to go with this. And today we're going to talk about Switzerland, land of the neutral. People who've avoided all the craziness in many of the wars and other things. But now they are looking to ban electric vehicles. Can you believe that? Ban electric vehicles. After all of this, telling us, go green, let's go green, they're going to ban it, right? Well, how come? Let's take a look and see what this article has to say. Swiss look to ban use of electric cars over the winter to save energy. Now, this is out of hot air up here. Hot air. The European Union jumped on the electric vehicle craze well ahead of other parts of the world. Well, that in the U.S. and other places. Many European countries almost immediately started making plans to ban gas-powered cars, trucks, make EVs mandatory. Lots of Europeans wanted to get out ahead of the curve and begin snapping up newer models, or they began to a while ago. But then came the start of the Ukraine war. So it's really interesting, and we're going to talk about this in a minute, about governments and about government interference. Because pretty much that's what this is all about, is government interference. So, according to Der Spiegel, the Mirror out of Germany, Switzerland could be the first country to impose driving bans on e-cars or EVs in an emergency to ensure energy security. That's a whole new phrase that we have lately, is energy security. And that's something we really do need to talk about. Now, several media report this unanimously and refer to draft regulation on restrictions and bans of the use of electrical energy. And I can attest to that. I've read this from many different sources, and I kind of settled on hot air to do this stream. The private use of electric cars is only permitted for absolutely necessary journeys. For example, professional practice, shopping, visiting the doctor, attending religious events, attending court appointments. Those, I guess, are all necessary. A stricter speed limit is also planned on highways. Now, I'm not sure what the stricter speed limit's really going to do, but that's something in the mix. Most of the electricity in Switzerland comes from hydropower. However, the country also imports electricity from Germany and France. If there are bottlenecks there, electricity could also become scarce in Switzerland. We're not talking about bottlenecks, we're talking about shortages. Energy security in Europe is considered endangered because of the Russian war of aggression against Ukraine. So right there, we've got a government-imposed issue, and that the government chose to play political games with their energy futures when it comes to people who supply the energy, i.e. Russia, who supplies 30-35% of the energy for EU. So you've got the government at one point who said, we got to go green, we got to drive EVs. Now we have the government interfering again, saying, no, you can't drive your EVs. Why? Because of government interference saying, hey, we're going to have this war that interrupts our energy flow. Government interference abound. Switzerland has various escalation levels for its energy crisis. How's that interesting? Several various escalation levels. The ban on recharging electric vehicles would only go into effect when they reach level 3, according to the draft copy of the legislation that reporters obtained. Prior to that, the government would impose limits on how hot water can be. The government would impose limits on how hot water can be in washing machines. What? That's up to the government to decide how white my whites get. That's crazy. Yes, seriously, it says. And they would ban the use of leaf blowers. And now, I might be down with that. Those things are loud and obnoxious. Although leaf blowers don't have to be electric. They can be driven by carbon. And seat heaters in chairlifts. Wait a minute. Seat heaters in chairlift. So we could still have the chairlift running, but we're not going to have seat heat. You know, when I grew up, I skied in Minnesota, and it was 20, 30, 40 below when I skied. And I had a heater in my seat every time I went up the lift. You know why? Because when I sat on the seat, it heated up. But these people in Europe have heaters on their chairlift seats. Oh my goodness. Talk about luxury. I'm sorry. I had to go off on that tangent. That's crazy. Okay, bizarrely, they will also limit videos from streaming services to be shown in SD. No HD. We're only going to have. I mean, politicians actually sat around and talked and discussed with so called experts that these are all great ideas to save the earth, to save the world, to prepare for war, to punish our citizens for our political decisions. That'd be the way I look at it. Now, this is really interesting. And you ask why I'm really covering this, because this is Switzerland, and what do I care if they're driving an EV over there or not? And I really don't much, except I think this is going to spread. I think more people or more areas, more countries are going to kind of jump on board this bandwagon, which is crazy. And we already have proof of it happening here in the U.S. So much the same as we saw in California earlier this year. The government pushed everyone to switch over to electric vehicles to save the planet, but now they're warning them that they won't be able to recharge their vehicles except for urgent travel requirements. Wonder how many of you out there like the idea of the government deciding what your urgent travel requirements are. That's interesting, huh? The crazy part of all this is that the major energy corporations have been warning everyone about this for several years. Of course they have. The power grid doesn't produce endless electricity by magic. Hate to tell a lot of people who drive these EVs, a lot of them are driven by coal, by natural gas, some by nuclear, some by solar, some by wind. But unless you yourself own your own production at your home that you store in a battery bank and then put it into your car when you charge it, you're on the grid. You're completely on the grid. So that's the big issue here. You've got governments in California, you've got governments in Switzerland, you've got governments, it's going to me, the turbine guy, big into the green pill, take care of your own green energy needs. This is going to spread throughout the Western civilization to now start limiting your driving on your green energy. So first they tell you have to drive on green energy. Now we're limiting when and where you can go. This sounds to the turbine guy like World War II when they offered coupons, ration coupons for gas. You could only get so many gallons, or you could only get so much food, or you could. Now, Switzerland is doing this, and California, to the people who are supposed to rescue and save the earth. And this has all been done for, as we just saw, political reasons. Government said go green. Government says you can't go green because government wants war. Imagine if we didn't have this war and none of this happened. There was a way to prevent it, but politics were more important. Politics, for all of the green agenda presented to everybody, politics turned out to be more important than saving the earth to the leaders of the Western world at this point. Okay, back to this. So much same in California. The government pushed everyone to switch over to electric vehicles, but now they're warning them they won't be able to drive unless urgent travel requirements. The crazy part of all this is that the major energy corporations have been warning them you have to produce enough energy to power it or it fails. Yes, you have to produce enough energy. But even if you produce enough energy to power the grid, that doesn't mean the grid won't fail, because the grid is old. It gets beat up, it gets abused. People lose power all the time. There's brownouts all over the place now, because a lot of it because of the grid, because the grid hasn't been overbuilt. The only thing that has saved us in the last 40 years is energy efficiency. We keep making everything more efficient. When I grew up, a color TV was 500 to 700 watts running. Now they're 50 to 100 watts. That's energy efficiency. Now we can run 8 to 10 TVs instead of one, right? Well, that is what saved us. But we're going to reach a turning point with all these electric vehicles unless you take it upon yourself. Now, I did read statistics today, did a little research, and it depends on where you look. And anywhere from 30 to 60% or 70% of the people who own solar systems also own electric vehicles, which is great because they can produce their own power to drive wherever they want to. But what's the problem with that? A minimal number own their own batteries to store their own energy. So, you are still reliant on the grid. You're still at their whim. You don't want to be at their whim. You want to control your own energy, your own driving. You don't want them to tell you. I mean, what are they going to do in Switzerland? Are they going to pull you over if you're driving an EV and say, why are you out driving? And we know there is a potential for that because of what we've seen in the last few years. So, are you going to have to produce your I got my own solar system card, so I got my own energy? Or what? I don't know what road this is going to lead us down, but you're better off to protect yourself and be ready. Now, to put the story in context, consider the fact that in June of this year, the EU proposed a ban on new gas-powered cars by 2035. In other words, you cannot sell another fossil-fueled vehicle in the EU. From 2035, which, by the way, Switzerland is not a member of the EU, so they're not subject to any of this. And they're still playing these games. From 2035, newly registered cars and light good vehicles will no longer be allowed to emit greenhouse gases. I wonder if they can emit pollutants, like real pollutants, like, say, sulfur, maybe some nitric oxides, maybe some hydrocarbon. Maybe they find a way to capture the carbon and that solves everything. I don't think that's going to happen, but maybe. The decision was approved on June 29th by the 27-member group. The ban on internal combustion engines voted by the European Parliament, which EU member states still have to approve, effectively marks the end of petrol and diesel-powered vehicles, as well as hybrids, which are currently experiencing a boom. Yes, all those hybrid vehicles you bought because your car will only go so many miles before the batteries die, so you can still get everywhere you need to, are going to be outlawed as well. That's crazy. In future, only new electric or hydrogen-powered models will be sold. Well, these guys point out a couple of things in here. 2035 is only a little more than a decade away. If this proposal passes, Europe won't even allow hybrids. Only fully electric vehicles, and good luck finding a hydrogen gas station. No kidding. And by the way, do you know how much energy it takes to make hydrogen? It takes a tremendous amount of energy. So, I mean, these things have to get smoothed out, and the government regulations, I'm not so sure are going to help. I'm not so sure at all they're going to help. And I say right at the end, I was under the impression that Europe was a collection of first world countries. Perhaps I was mistaken. And that is Jazz Shaw here, who put this story out yesterday. Now, it's a little bit of a sarcastic story, and it's a little right-wing leaning, but it brings up a lot of points. And to me, the biggest point is people need to learn to take care of themselves. Quit relying on the government. If you want an electric vehicle, great. You should power it yourself. You should install your own stuff. You should take care of yourself. Don't count on someone else. Don't count on that power company 200 miles away using coal, burning all this extra coal just to get the electricity to you. It's crazy, but we all have to think about the whole picture, not just a little picture. And that's exactly what this story tells you, is that thinking of the little picture is the way green energy fails. Thinking about the big picture is the way green energy succeeds. Well, this has been the first installment of a Green Pill Update. I look to keep finding articles like this to clue people into what's going on in the world and give the Turbine guys bent on what's going on. I'm going to tell you, take care of yourself. Use what's available to you. Turbine guy, signing off.